What is fear? What is fear? Well, to start off, these videos that I'm making are not planned. I don't have any bullet points in front of me. I don't have a script running in front of me. I don't even have any kind of agenda that I want to talk about. And this is something that I am committing to as far as my own surrendering process goes, in conjunction with my inner healing. Because living in a place of surrender is ultimately where I want to be, to fully trust the universe, God, creator, whatever you want to call it, consciousness, to fully trust that energy, that being, to guide my life. And my ego over the last few days was trying to come up with things I'm going to say and make all kinds of plans of how I'm going to say it and what I'm going to say. And I'll talk about surrender, and I'll talk about this, I'll talk about that. And I'm like, nope, not going to talk about anything that you suggest, ego. I am going to go into this recording completely blank, or at least as blank as I possibly can, and just flow with whatever comes through me. And of course, as it turns out, just before the recording, there was a quick conversation I had with one of my mentors, and the topic of fear came up. And I asked him a question, and he pointed out, well, it's probably fear you have in your stomach still. And that was like, shoot, okay, yep, I feel it. So we're going to talk about fear. And what is fear? Well, most people think of fear, at least in my experience, as something that, you're afraid of a certain situation because it might cause you harm, whether that be, physical harm, emotional harm, mental harm, financial harm. Okay, I'm afraid to give up my job that I hate because it's giving me a certain financial security, even though, in today's world, there is no such thing as financial security. Everything could go up in smoke any moment now. So fear is interesting because obviously it's an inherent part of life, not just in human life, but you can see it in the natural world too, in animals, right? You can even see it in microbes, that there's a certain stimuli based on the outside world that sentient beings, even if it's just a multi-cell organism, it's still sentient on some level, that once that stimuli enters their system, there's a knee-jerk reaction, there's a protection mechanism, there's something that kicks in that is often referred to as the fight or flight mode. So you're either going to fight yourself out of this situation, or you're going to run like hell, or like heaven. So in our case, in the human species, we have something very deeply in ourselves, in our nervous system, primarily governed by the amygdala. So the amygdala is a little gland on the back of your brain that creates the fear hormones. And I forgot off the top of my head what they are now, but the amygdala is basically there to inject these fear hormones into your system if it perceives to be in a dangerous situation. So if in the classic example, when we were still living in tribes mostly and we were hunter-gatherers, if we encountered a dangerous animal like the saber-toothed tiger, then our automatic fear response would kick in, and it would inject into our bloodstream high doses of adrenaline, so we could either fight our way through this situation, or we can run away and hopefully run faster than the saber-toothed tiger, which probably didn't work out so well back in the day. So it's a system that's designed to protect us. It's a system that's designed to protect our physical well-being. It detects danger, and then it kicks us automatically into fight or flight response. It shuts down all other functions of the brain, including the frontal cortex, which is designed for higher intelligence, reasoning, critical thought, calculations, analysis, all that goes out the window. And the nervous system goes into like a hyper performance mode to either fight or flight, right? And everything else is beside the point. And you may also notice that when you are in a fearful situation, all of a sudden you have to go to the bathroom. Why is that? Well, because your nervous system wants to dump extra weight so that you're lighter during fight or flight. That's why you have that response, which is also why you have that response when you drink coffee. Coffee brings your system into fight or flight because, believe it or not, coffee is recognized by our biological physical body as a poison. That's why you start sweating, that's why your heart starts pumping, and your frontal cortex shuts down. There's a reduction of up to 40% in blood flow to the brain after just one cup of coffee. Look it up, there's plenty of videos online. Jason Christoff does an excellent expose on coffee. So anyway, side note. So your system then goes into this fight or flight mode once it detects perceived danger. Perceived danger. Now, obviously, in our modern world here, with our hyper-technologicalized world, we don't have to fight saber-toothed tigers anymore. You know, maybe a grumpy neighbor every once in a while, depending on election season. Who knows? But most of the time, we don't have to fight our way through life anymore, right? We go to the grocery store, get our food and whatever, or farmer's market, ideally. And so that system, that automatic response system, the fight or flight system, is still within us, though. And in today's world, you know, the example I gave earlier, when we quit our job, then we no longer have financial security. So we equate then financial security with physical well-being. Well, if I lose my job, I'm not going to make money. That means I'm not going to be able to pay my rent. That means I'm not going to be able to feed myself or my children or my family. That means I'm going to end up on the street. That means we're going to die on the street, right? So the subconscious, which calculates and processes information at least 8 million bits per second, makes all these calculations basically. You know, let's say your boss is unsatisfied with your work performance, and you get that gut feeling of, oh shit, I'm going to lose my job, and then the fear starts. Okay, the system sets into gear. It within a millisecond, it calculates if you lose your job, your family is going to die, right? And all the steps in between I just lined out. So that's when you suddenly get into fear mode, and you can't fight or flight with your boss in that situation. So what's the next best thing? You obey. You obey, you become quiet, you become appeasing. Please, authority figure, don't hurt me, don't harm me. I need this job to stay alive and to keep my family alive as well. Your subconscious does that in a fraction of a second, and you get that fear response. Okay, so that's a rather benign example, and there's more to it. Obviously, I'm just giving sort of an overview of how it works in our modern world today. But as I said, fear is something so deep within us that at the very core, we still have a lot of fears about all kinds of things, including stuff that's not even ours, okay? So, for example, my family lived through both world wars, okay? World War I and World War II. And through my sacred plant medicine journeys that I've taken over these past few years, there were, at least one occasion where I remember I saw the trauma and the fear that was in my DNA, in my family's lineage from that time, World War I and World War II. I saw a few visuals and a few images with that, but that was sort of secondary. I felt the terror. I felt the fear of what it was like to live through those times. And it was inside of me. I could feel it, and it was coming out, and it was absolutely terrifying. And on another journey that I took, I had to face my existential fear. That fear, as it was coming out, was in every cell of my being. It was in the tips of my toes. It was at the ends of my hair on the top of my head. I felt it. I could see this fear, how it had basically spread itself into every single cell of my body. And when that happened, that night, when I was facing my existential fear and I was releasing it, it was coming out, that was absolutely the most terrifying, scariest moment of my entire life. And there was a moment where I thought, like, I'm going to choke. I'm going to choke on my fear. I'm not going to, this is it. Now, I survived, obviously, but all that to say is, why didn't I feel this intense fear when I was going through my day-to-day life, 20, 30 years of my life? Why didn't I feel it? Why didn't I feel it? Why did I have to go to, a professionally guided plant ceremony journey to face that fear, to let it come out, let it wash through me, get it out of my system? Because the subconscious mind, again, is designed to protect you. It is designed to protect your physical well-being. So it is absolutely incredible what it's capable of doing when it relates to suppressing your emotions, especially the negative ones, the heavy negative emotions that we're all exposed to, especially when we're growing up. I mean, birth by itself is very traumatizing. I had to go through a C-section, and I remember some of that. That will be a whole other video coming soon, but we all have fear, and we all have fear sitting very, very deeply inside of us that we're not aware of, because our subconscious mind is protecting us. It is protecting our physical well-being. It's protecting our mental well-being. It's saying that whenever we sort of look in that direction, or whenever we want to self-inquire, and we want to examine a situation where we felt intense fear and it didn't really make sense, and we start asking questions, it will throw off all kinds of flares and distractions and other signals to distract your mind away from what's really behind that fear. Why did that situation that wasn't really that big of a deal, like the boss being upset with you, why did that create such intense fear inside of me that was completely disproportional to the actual situation that I was in? Because the sheer notion of letting that fear come out, first of all, would be in a social setting would be rather unacceptable. I mean, you're hissing and fitting and spitting your fear out of your system. That's kind of a weird situation, obviously. But more than that, the ego is built upon your fear and on your pain and all the other, misery and self-doubt and all the other negative emotions. That is the foundation upon which the ego has built itself. And the ego is, it's fiction. It's a fictional construct. I've talked about this in the last video. But nonetheless, it has a survival mechanism of its own. It doesn't want to die. It doesn't want to lose its foundation, right? I mean, how do you feel when there's an earthquake, for example, right? You feel like you're losing ground. It's not a very comfortable feeling. So you're going to do everything you can to hold on to power and to hold on to control and to save your life. Similar to the ego, the subconscious fictional construct that had to build itself upon the fear and the doubt and the worry and the anxiety, whatever the case may be. Pain, for sure. Fear is like one level above pain. So there's always pain at the very root cause of everything. So the ego has built itself upon that, and that's who we think we are. That's who I thought I was. Until I realized, wait a second, through these plant medicine journeys, I was able to see myself from a whole different angle. I saw that the ego, again, had built itself upon the basis of pain and fear and was creating a self-image that I thought was me, when in fact it wasn't me. It was my ego that was trying to protect me from discovering all the deep-seated fear I had. So now, obviously, okay, what's the solution? All right? So we can agree that everyone is in some form of pain. We can agree that everyone is in some kind of fear. And if you don't have fear yourself, then you definitely have fear from your ancestors. I mean, it's very rare for someone not to have some level of fear. I mean, we live in some pretty scary times. So, okay, everyone has pain, everyone has fear. Now, how do we start dealing with that? If what I'm saying is true, and you're welcome to verify this with other psychologists and other people who understand consciousness, who understand the subconscious mind and the brain and how it operates. So, if we assume this to be right, okay, then we can assume two things. Number one, who I think I am is not who I am. Number two, the real me, my true essence, who I truly am, is buried underneath all that pain and fear. So then the next logical conclusion will be, okay, I'm going to have to start looking at myself, at my pain, at my fear, and release it. Let it come out. And there's many different modalities. One of them I shared in the last video, discoverhealing.com. It's a very good process where you can start to release some of those old fears of yours and even false core beliefs and false core identities based upon that pain and that fear. Ideally, what I'm going to say is professionally guided plant medicine. And it has to be someone that you're doing this with who understands what it's like, who understands consciousness, who understands how the brain and specifically the subconscious works and how fear operates. Okay? And you might say that, oh, well, I don't have that much fear. I have a bit of anxiety. I take Xanax or whatever, and I'm good. Well, my teacher would say, never underestimate the power of denial. I thought I was perfectly fine. I thought I was, a healthy adult operating. I was, most of the time I was in a good mood. But there were some areas in my life that just had a lot of friction, and things didn't work out well no matter what I did or how I tried. Because the suppressed fear will not necessarily generate the feeling of fear, but it will generate behaviors, thought patterns, certain preferences and dislikes, okay? It'll certainly create certain boundaries, sort of invisible walls around you. Like, I can't make more than $5,000 a month, or whatever the case may be, right? And you may try to, be an entrepreneur, and you may try to get that raise, or whatever the case may be. You're trying to get more money, but whatever you're doing, whatever you're trying, you're just not breaking through that 5K barrier, no matter what you try. So then the question becomes, okay, what is preventing me? How am I preventing myself, really, from breaking through that barrier? What's inside of me that's preventing me to go beyond that, invisible limit? And so that's when, the hero's journey begins, when you start asking yourself these hard questions. And eventually, if you do it well enough, you're going to discover some pretty hard truths about yourself, about your family, about your ancestors, about the world, about energy, about your spirit, about your soul, about everything you thought you knew to be true about yourself. Truth is what it is. You can either bend it to its will, or you can continue living a lie. But hey, I'd rather swallow a hard truth than continue living a lie, especially these days. So, I mean, this is just a quick touch on what fear really is. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, everything is energy, right? So we have energy, vibration, and frequency. So those three elements make up our known reality. So fear is an energy, it's a frequency that sits somewhere in your system. It's stored within the cells, it's stored in your fascia, it's stored in the muscles. And your subconscious is blocking access to it, right? Because the pain would just be too much to bear. At least that's what it thinks. So when you start to dig into that deep vault and you start releasing some of that fear, you start to realize, wait a second, that way of behaving or that way of thinking about myself, I don't want to do that anymore. It doesn't serve me. Okay, the self-criticism or self-doubt or whatever the case may be, or financial limits or worries or financial stressors that I'm putting upon myself because my dad or my mom used to do that all the time when I was growing up. So I picked it up. My subconscious absorbed it like a sponge when I was 0 to 6 years old. Okay, so everyone goes through that. So whatever happened to you, whatever happened in your environment when you were 0 to 6 years old, that went directly into your subconscious. So fear is energy, and that energy has to come out. And there's different ways it can come out. Obviously with plant medicine, there are several ways that the energy can discharge from your system. It doesn't always have to require purging. There are certain plants that not necessarily make you purge. So each plant, is designed to do a specific job depending on where you are in your journey. That's why, again, it helps to have someone who's very proficient with that. And then once you realize, oh, it's just energy, but it's such intense, jagged, chaotic, discordant, ugly, loud even, energy that's messing up my system. When at the root core, I know I am peaceful. I know I am love. I know I am harmony. Right? Our souls, they come from God. They come from the Creator, the source of all creation, whatever that is to you. So anything that's between your true essence and your physical perfect life, right? There's fear, there's pain, there's anxiety, whatever the case may be. And so the more we remove these blocks, the more we shed these old heavy emotions, the more our real self, the more our pure soul is going to express itself physically. We're going to have better thoughts about ourselves. We're going to have, better emotions about ourselves. We're going to have less brain fog. We're going to be clear and coherent, more awareness about our surroundings. We're going to be more emotionally intelligent. We're not going to have these self-imposed limits on ourselves. Okay, so think of it that way. You're taking apart an invisible prison that you have built around yourself. And all we have to do, the key is within us. We have the key to our own freedom, our own inner self-expression and freedom. But the cost for that is facing your pain, facing your fear, facing your anxiety, letting your self-doubt come out, letting your worry come out. Whatever the case may be, let it all come out. It has to come out. It's just energy. Yes, it's probably going to be painful. And yes, it's going to be very scary when that shit comes out. But it has to be done. There is no other way. The self-healing is how we heal our species. That is how we heal our planet or plane, whatever you prefer. We have to do the inner work first. Okay? Stop worrying about the outside world. The outside world is crazy. It's a theater. It's a show. All right? All the world's a stage, and you and I are merely players. That's what Shakespeare said many centuries ago. He knew what was going on. So don't care. Don't pay attention to the outer world. Look within. Look within and look at your patterns. Look at your fears. Look at your pain. Let it come out. That is the way to true healing. Yourself, your relationships, your reality, and ultimately our entire species and our collective consciousness. So thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think about fear. Have you faced your fear yet? Where are you at in the process? Have you started the inner healing journey yet? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. Thank you so much for watching.